Hey everybody, how's it going? Amy Yardley here, and I had an interesting event this week that I wanted to just pop in here and talk about. Yesterday, I gave a presentation on gut health and healing diets, and specifically fermented foods. And I was giving this presentation. And as I always do, I include a lot of stories about my life, and of course, the reason why healing diets became a part of my life, and the reason for that was my kid suffered from very serious and chronic constipation, and so I was telling some stories about that constipation, and then as oftentimes happens when you start to tell stories, you open up the memory box, and then just hours later, I have like these memories floating through my head about like, oh yeah, I remember this, and oh yeah, I remember this, and I remember this. And it's really interesting how, time gives you perspective on those stories, and how I can think about those stories, and I can look at it and say, I was really traumatic. It was seriously emotionally traumatic. Um, but I'm okay with it. Like, that's just part of my story. And I've come so far from that. And my kid has come so far from that. But one of the stories that I popped into my head was about when my son was about 2.5, I think. So we were way before even necessarily thinking anything was going differently for my kid. Because, as toddlers, you're like, well, they're just a fussy toddler, all of these sorts of things. And we were visiting my brother-in-law and sister-in-law, and we were staying at their house, and they lived in Park City. And so there was, we were at their house, and then there was also my husband's aunt and uncle who were also staying in the house, because it's a really large house. I mean, it's Park City, so if you know, you know. And so that night, we had ice cream for dessert. And Spencer was seemingly to enjoy this ice cream. And it was kind of nice to see him enjoying something, because, again, he was like really fussy. And, we're traveling, and everything is kind of stressful when you do all that. And they had dogs, and the dogs would lick his skin, and his skin would just flare up. He would just get hives and just an obvious histamine reaction just from the dog's saliva and stuff like that. So he wasn't really having the best of times. So it was like, oh, look, he's eating ice cream. Isn't that great? Yay, he's a normal kid. And, everything's hunky-dory. And so go to sleep that night. And about 2 o'clock in the morning, he wakes up out of a deep sleep and is just screaming in pain, screaming his head off. And he is obviously in distress. And, of course, we're all just like, what is going on? And no amount of soothing, no amount of rocking or walking or massaging the tummy was stopping this. He was just in super duper pain. And I didn't have anything because we were traveling, right? And so I was just like, shit, I don't have anything. So I got in the car, 2:30, 2 o'clock in the morning, drove down the hill to the 24-hour grocery store, found some simethicone drops, which relieve the gas. That's the only thing I knew at the time, because this was pre anything. Like, Amy didn't know jack shit about the digestive system or diet or anything like that at this time. So I got the simethicone drops and drove back up the hill, and gave Spencer the drops, and it seemed to help him. I think I seem to recall that part. I mean, at this point, I'm in my own brainstem around what's going on, so I don't really have very clear, cogent memories about all of the steps. But he did eventually calm down. But I think it was probably a good 90 minutes where he was doing nothing but crying and screaming. So the next morning, gathering for breakfast or whatever, and I can't remember who said it, but it was somebody who said it. This is family. We're all family staying here. And somebody had said, well, somebody had a hard time last night. And, at the time, I was like, oh my God, I was like embarrassed, and I was just like insecure because I didn't want to wake other people and what's going on and stuff. But now, 15 years later, I was reflecting on that, and I'm like, that is a completely shitty, passive-aggressive thing to have said. Because here we are, we're new parents, we're, experienced adults, but we're new parents. And there were 4 other adults in that house who are experienced parents many times over. And you don't come to ask if there's anything you can do. You don't come to offer, you don't come offer help. Instead, you offer a really shitty remark at breakfast, passive aggressive remark. And where I am now, I can look at that and just kind of laugh. And I'm just like, wow, that's really interesting. and the way that I deal with people in my life now is I can look at that and honestly offer them gratitude for showing who they are. Well, thank you for showing me who you are, because that tells me where I'm placing you on my circle board, which is kind of like a chessboard, where it's like you don't have access to my inner circle. You don't have access to me and my kid. You're actually in a very outer circle. Even though we are close familial wise and our family tree wise, doesn't mean you get to have close access to me emotionally. And so I offer thanks to people for showing me who you are. And it can hurt because maybe we had a previous relationship and I thought you would have been more supportive of me. But that is my own deal, right? That's my boundary that I have to deal with myself. So when anybody offers themselves in a way that I'm not expecting, I thank them for showing me who they are. And I visualize them on my chessboard, my circle board, going to another layer outward. It's like, that's okay. We can still know each other. We can still be family, but emotionally, you are placed at this distance from me. And then I'm not expecting you to act towards me in a certain way or to do things for me, because I get that. And I have to be okay with that, because ultimately, you do you and I'll do me. And I can't control what anyone else does. I can't control what anyone else says or how they react. I can only control my reaction to those things. And would it be nice if we all lived in a Hallmark movie where everyone came together and was supportive and Christmas and Thanksgiving was saved and everything was grand? Yeah, that'd be super awesome, but it doesn't happen that way. This is real life. And we have to, part of our own personal growth is being able to say, look, I get it. You are you and I am me. And yeah, I could really use your help, but I have a choice here. And that choice is I either keep this anger and this frustration around you not being the person that I thought you were going to be, or I can say, you know what? That person has just shown me who they are, and that's okay. They're in a different place in their life. So I'm going to place them here in my relationship circle, and I'm not going to carry any emotion about that. I'm going to drop it, and I'm just going to lay it down. And it is such a relief to not have to carry around these, like, probably my Midwestern upbringing around this passive aggressive stuff where we just kind of keep it and we hoard it and then we're like, but it's like, you know what? I don't have to feel any way about it. I can choose to feel angry. I can choose to feel sad, or I can choose to feel nothing about it and just be like, okay, that's your life. Thank you for showing me who you are. And I'm no longer going to invest time and emotion and effort and energy into wishing that you were somebody who you're not. So anyway, that was just an interesting story that popped up was about that, and how I never really registered that remark that we got at breakfast time as being passive aggressive, but certainly given the length of time now, I can look at that and go, wow, that was really kind of interesting. And so this practice of doing boundaries and putting people in their circles and all of that kind of stuff is something that I talk about in the program that I'm creating, From Barely Surviving to Thriving, and I'll be talking more in depth about that. But it is a continuous practice, and I do this all the time, even, every single day, because I'll sit there and I'm like, oh, I expected you to support me better. And that's a point where we can say, I can have a conversation about it, or I can just be like, oh, well, thank you for showing me who you are, and thank you for showing me that this is no longer a relationship that I need to be putting a lot of effort or investment in, because it's not in my best interest for that. So anyway, I just wanted to share that story today, to let you know that, because I think too, when it comes to family, it's easy to do that with strangers, but when it's family, it's more difficult, because that decision about where we place people in terms of how close they are to us, when it's family, we feel obligated to keep people in our lives because they're family. It's a little bit messier cutting off those kinds of investments, those emotional investments. But it's no different. That's just kind of all in our head, right? Toxic people are toxic people. We all have toxic people in our families. And you have permission to not allow those people to have access to you and your kid. If they have shown you who they are, they have shown you who they are. And no amount of wishing on your part is going to change that. You know, everybody has their own journey and their own process of personal development. And some people just don't do that. That's okay. But that also means you don't have to be a part of my life, because I'm on a different journey and I, am searching in this direction. And you be you over here and I'm going to be me over here. And that is a-okay. All right. So anyway, I just wanted to share that story with you. Do you like my flowers? Aren't they pretty? Those are really nice. I love my flowers. I hope you have a great Sunday, and that maybe you can think about your own boundaries and relationships, and the relationships that are draining to you, that are an unbalanced exchange of value for you, and that really work on that idea that you have permission to release those relationships. You have permission to have those people be in a different place in your life. It's okay. It's okay. All right. Love y'all. Talk to you later. Bye.